Chapter 1611. Defense of Tion High City. The lightning in the sky rushed towards Jia, carrying the power that seemed to devour him completely, but in the end, it all poured into his hands and gathered into a silver-white, unstable lightning ball. Silver light shone in the sky above Tion High City, illuminating the entire land. Everyone subconsciously raised their heads to see the magnificent and dazzling scene. Leang Yu and Hua just took a look, and then turned their heads to look around. The black and white commanders led hundreds of captain-level blue-armored warriors, and they were already rushing towards the fortress from all directions like a pack of wolves. Zheng. Liang Yu's thumb raised a dragon cry, and the snow-white blade popped out, emitting a cold chill. Hua, let's go. Liang Yu shouted in a low voice, and then suddenly pulled out the long sword in her hand. Facing the dozen blue-armored warriors rushing in front of her, her eyes were focused and cold like a machine. Shwa, shwa, shwa. She quickly swung out 3 swords, cutting horizontally, vertically, and sideways. The sword technique was simple and without any fancy. 3 blue sword lights were like rising clouds, instantly cutting through the space and slashing at all the enemies in front of her. Such a fast sword. Such a powerful chi. As Liang Yu had already stepped half a foot into the threshold of Ypsilon, she finally experienced the realm of martial arts legends, chi out of the body. This is the legendary sword light and knife aura, which can only be achieved when one's own chi is cultivated to a certain level. Jiang He once said that Liang Yu was the purest martial arts faction among them, and the one with the highest fighting talent. Once she broke through the limit, her combat effectiveness would increase exponentially. Even though she had not completely broken through the limit of Ypsilon at this time, the strength she showed had reached the level of Xingdao Soul Lost. She formed an absolutely overwhelming crushing posture against the Delta-level aliens. After 3 slashes, 3 azure blade lights instantly swept across the bodies of the 3 green-armored warriors, directly splitting their proud high-tech armor and their bodies. Liang Yu let out an angry roar, holding the knife with both hands, and rushed directly to hundreds of green-armored warriors without fear. On the other side, Hua revealed her Qiongqi posture after a gust of wind. It was black, with wings on its back and a black raccoon's king pattern on its forehead. It blocked the black and white commander in front of it, and let out bursts of whistles. Strange beast. The black and white commander's expression obviously became a little solemn. Strange beasts are very rare, especially high-level strange beasts. The natural wildness of animals, plus the fighting power of cats, is far greater than that of humans. The black and white commander twisted his neck. Who is not a beast? As soon as he finished speaking, a black energy rose from his feet like smoke. After a moment, he broke the armor on his body, and his body quickly grew larger and finally turned into a hideous monster with a height of 100 meters and a black armor all over his body. A monster similar to a dinosaur, very much like the monster Godzilla in the film and television drama, but uglier than it, with spikes all over his armor. Hua, who was only a few dozen meters in size, was as small as a kitten in front of it. Roar. It looked down at Hua from a high place and let out an angry roar. The sound waves hit Hua, making its hair as hard as steel needles all bow down. But this also angered Hua. It roared and instantly pounced on the giant beast. In Tion High City, 3 battlefields were fighting fiercely at the same time. In the sky, the huge silver electric light in the palm of the silver armor had accumulated more and more, and finally turned into a super-large lightning sphere with a diameter of more than 10 meters. The air around was distorted. The wound on Jia's palm left by Jiang He was still bleeding. It seemed that he could not bear the terrifying power in his palm, and his bones began to twist. He looked down at his feet from a high altitude. From this distance, the spherical fortress was pitifully small. However, Jia was still able to penetrate the layers of clouds and lock Jiang He's position. Thor, devour my enemies. As soon as Jia finished speaking, the giant lightning in his hand smashed down fiercely, pointing directly at the direction where Jiang He was.
Who?
The silver lightning instantly cut through the space, and in an unstoppable manner, it roared and rushed straight towards Jiang He. The terrifying power was like a comet that hit the dark clouds and then fell to the earth. The entire world of Tion High City was illuminated by it, and no one could not be illuminated by its brilliance. Even Jiang He felt a strong pressure coming from the sky at this time. Is this the might of heaven? The first thing that came to Jiang He's mind was the lightning that covered the sky and struck from the end of the sky in Edo. Compared with that time, Jia's attack was just like child's play. Jiang He raised his right hand and felt the terrifying attack from the sky. Then, the huge white lightning ball fell down and landed heavily on the dimension gate. Like a stone falling into the water, the terrifying energy was impacting the dimension gate, challenging the energy limit it could withstand. Jia's eyes were fixed on everything in front of him. He also had some information about Jiang He's ability, but he was very sure that his attack, with Jiang He's strength, could not be completely withstood, because they were fully prepared for this battle. He was also the most powerful of all the silver-armored generals who were on this mission. Including the two black and white commanders, they were also very powerful, but it was a pity that one of them died before he could achieve his goal. According to the human world's standard for the division of the strength of people with abilities, this person's points are around 22,000 points. But my points are 26,000. This is enough for me to break through his defense with one blow and send him to a dead end. Silver Armor whispered confidently, with his hands folded across his chest, standing in the sky like Thor, waiting for Jiang He's dimensional gate to be penetrated. However, the expected scene did not appear. The huge thunderball hit the dimensional gate, and the pure energy made the dimensional gate begin to stir. But its slow fall did not cause the dimensional gate to be shattered. Instead, it slowly and silently went in. Until the last flash of lightning disappeared, the huge shield wall of the dimensional gate covering the entire fortress did not break. After obtaining Wang Shouren's Xinxue, my understanding of superpowers has become more profound. The progress of absorbing the origin of superpowers has also greatly improved. Now I have absorbed the origins of the evil boy and the god of the nest. My index is about 25,000 now, Jiang He said lightly. Chapter 16:12. Be prepared. The dimensional gate swallowed up all of Silver Armor's thunder. This scene made Silver Armor, who was originally full of confidence, break through the defense directly. What?
How?
How could this happen? He couldn't believe what he saw. His powerful attack did not cause any damage to the opponent. He originally thought that he would directly break through the blockade and kill everyone except Jiang He. Everything in front of him was beyond his cognition and disrupted his position. Because they appeared in this world, they actually had huge restrictions on human attacks and could not fight for a long time. But now it seems that it has become extremely difficult for him to quickly take down Jiang He. Even his ability can't break Jiang He's defense, he can't think of how to defeat Jiang He. Even winning has become so difficult. But the order of that person is to capture him alive and use him as an experimental subject for research. Jiang He stood on the top of the fortress, facing Silver Armor 10,000 meters away in the sky, slowly raised his right hand, and aimed his palm at Silver Armor. What a powerful force! I can't even save my space. If I don't find a place to release it, something bad will happen. In the dimensional gate, the surging power was about to burst out at any time, so Jiang He directly controlled the gate to eject the power from the dimensional gate, pointing directly at the Silver Armor in the air. This terrifying power returned the same way it came, but after the outbreak, it was no longer in the form of a thunderball, but in the form of lightning, surging through the dimensional gate, like a silver sword piercing the sky. Jia clenched his fists. This was the first time he had seen such an attack method in his life. However, as a battle-hardened warrior, he was not at a loss. His rich combat experience made him choose to activate his ability and trigger thunder at the first time. He raised his right palm high, and his palm was like a long knife, aiming at the lightning column below and slashing it directly. The control of lightning was activated. Facing the impact of this powerful force, he desperately controlled the lightning and separated it to both sides. Boom! When the lightning column approached Yinjia, it was diverted from the left and right sides like a flood encountering a mountain peak, but this magnificent force also made Yinjia's body bear great pressure. Ahem! His internal organs were shaken, and he couldn't help spitting out a mouthful of sweet blood. Attack! Jiang He whispered. Above the fortress, a square-shaped barrier stone partition was opened, revealing a hole large enough for firing. From the sky above the shelter, a huge gun barrel extended, aiming at Yinjia in the sky. Lu Kuarant's Tianwei weapon, Tion High Cannon, has been fully charged. Just after Yinjia had just dealt with his own attack that was rebounded, there was a gap that could not be missed, and the Tion High Cannon issued a roar that resounded throughout the entire Tion High City. At the same time, Jiang He also rushed into the sky from another direction and launched the Star Cannon at Yinjia. Two terrifying forces attacked from the left and right sides after the lightning, blocking the direction in which Yinjia could escape. The terrifying power of the void condensed at Jiang He's fingertips, turning into a black ball the size of a marble, crystal clear, and then burst out from the fingertips, turning into a slender black sword, heading straight for Yinjia. At this moment, Yinjia finally realized that there was a major mistake in the intelligence they had obtained. Jiang He's strength was not 22,000 points at all, but close to him, enough to compete with him. But in the case of close strength, whoever has the advantage of the home court will completely take the initiative on the battlefield. Yinjia was a little exhausted at this time, and there was no time to dodge the attacks from the left and right directions, so he could only activate his own abilities. Silver lightning came from all directions, forming a huge spherical shield around his body, wrapping his entire body in it. Boom! Tion High Cannon and Guanxing Cannon directly hit the lightning shield, instantly smashing the shield. Ahem! Yinjia couldn't withstand the two huge forces, and was directly knocked out fiercely, and his body suffered unimaginable damage. In just a moment, he made a decision: escape. There was a major mistake in the intelligence, and the enemy's strength was seriously misjudged. In addition, the underground people were greatly restricted in their actions on the surface. No matter how you look at it, this mission is difficult to complete. So, he must escape from here, wait for other troops to complete their tasks, and then gather the army to launch a full-scale attack on Tion High City. At that time, they're fully confident that they can destroy Tion High City and capture the human from the time and space system alive. Jiang He looked at Yinjia, who wanted to escape, and a mocking smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Tion High City, can you come and go as you want? No one can escape from Jiang He's eyes after being defeated. Is the space system kidding you? He took a step forward, and the ability of Space Shuttle was activated, and he chased after Yinjia. However, he did not carelessly, but kept a sufficient distance from Yinjia, then took out his sniper and began to snipe Yinjia in the air. He wanted to use up every drop of Yinjia's blood, and then kill him. According to the opponent's speed, it will take a long time to escape back to Qingdaowu from here. Jiang He couldn't let him go back. At the same time, Jiang He used the radio in the fortress to transmit his voice to the entire Tion High City. Are you going to escape? What about your men? Are you going to watch them die here? According to the intelligence transmitted by the East China Sea region, these warriors of the underground civilization seem to have the technological power to convert language. This can also be seen from the undercover Wan Ping at the time. The other party is also a group with advanced civilization. So after Jiang He's words spread throughout Tion High City, the Wugu warriors, including the black and white commanders, were all dumbfounded. They subconsciously raised their heads, only to see that the silver-armored general they admired the most was actually being chased by a human. All of a sudden, their inner beliefs were shaken violently. Originally, they were instilled with the idea that the Wulwan Empire was invincible and could easily crush these ant civilizations on the surface. However, their commander was beaten to death by an ant and fled without paying any attention to his loyal subordinates. The soldiers in the Fog Valley were a little upset, but they could not escape from the battlefield. There seemed to be only two enemies in front of them, but each of them was like a killing god. Huahua's ability index had now reached 15,000 points, and she was fighting fiercely with the black and white leader who had turned into a giant beast. Chapter 1613 Wulwan Empire. With the strength of Quasi-Epsilon, Leang Yu killed hundreds of blue-armored warriors like no one in the land. As soon as Longming's long sword came out, the blue energy was like a curtain of light, swift, sharp, and domineering. The sharp blade light easily cut through the armor and flesh of the blue-armored warrior. Even the enhanced aliens could hardly block her a few knives. If there were not more than 10 soldiers with more than 9,900 points among these warriors, they could barely block Leang Yu for a while with mutual cooperation. It was really not much harder for Leang Yu to kill them than to kill ordinary people. This is the purest martial arts school, the strength of the top martial arts master of Huashu country. Today, Leang Yu is almost invincible in the face of those below the level of Epsilon. In addition, although other aliens did not take the initiative to appear on the front battlefield, the support from the rear was endless. Uncle Yu controlled the large-caliber machine gun and fired at them frantically from the inside of the fortress. The aliens with auxiliary abilities, such as Fatty Su, reinforced Huahua and Leang Yu, creating a favorable combat environment for them. Under such favorable combat conditions, the more than 100 captain-level warriors in Wugu were just slightly more powerful whetstones in her eyes, and it would not take long to kill them all. She stood in the battle formation, holding a long sword with a dragon roar, and the bodies of blue-armored warriors were all around her. She felt the power constantly surging in her body, and she felt that she had never felt so refreshing and powerful before. Swish! 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 Leang Yu casually swung a few knives, and the azure blade light was like a sky curtain, slashing straight at the distant enemy. Wherever the knife light passed, the bodies of several blue-armored warriors were directly split in half, and the weapons in their hands were also neatly cut apart. At this time, Leang Yu was completely a weakened version of Li Changgong, and the attack power of the Grandmaster was terrifyingly strong. Even Jiang He, before he had obtained the ability of tracing all things, was a little afraid of Leang Yu. He deliberately suppressed Leang Yu's ability to improve, because with such a martial arts master around, she could instantly draw her sword and kill anyone if she wasn't careful. Leang Yu, on her side, almost crushed hundreds of captain-level aliens alone. She was too fast and too strong, and she could cut off a person's head with one knife wherever she went. Clean and neat, without any extra moves, just one knife to kill. Even these elite warriors of the Fog Valley, who were larger than humans, felt that they were difficult to compete with when facing the human females who were much smaller than them. On the other side, Huahua's battle with the black and white commander was even more tragic. The fighting instinct of cats, the flexibility and agility of their bodies, made Huahua a powerful killing machine. In addition, Liu Karen built it a set of armor made of memory metal, which made its combat effectiveness even stronger. It fought hand-to-hand with the giant beast transformed by the black and white commander. No matter what, the black and white commander was a giant beast transformed by an intelligent creature. When it comes to hunting instinct, how can it be compared with cats? So after the two fought, although the black and white commander was slightly better in terms of strength, he could not be compared with Huahua, the wild beast, in terms of reaction ability and fierceness in fighting. The more injuries Huahua suffered, the more amazing her beastly nature was, and the more terrible her fighting power was. Even though she was covered in blood, she rushed towards the black and white commander with red eyes. This fearless fighting style itself has made the black and white commander anxious. At this time, Jiang He's shouting made him realize that their general had abandoned his subordinates and fled. All of a sudden, the black and white commander, who was still fighting for his life, collapsed a lot, and his will to fight was also fading rapidly. It's not that they can't die in battle, but they are unwilling to die meaninglessly when they are abandoned by the upper level and thrown into the battlefield as abandoned pawns. Without the will to fight, their fighting power will be greatly weakened. On the other hand, Jiang He saw that the main general had gained the advantage on the battlefield, and their fighting became more and more courageous. The balance on the battlefield quickly tilted towards Tion High City. In the fortress built by the barrier stone, Bailey Chongqing, Wu Di, and the members of the Fueying unit who were responsible for the support work watched the battle, with their blood boiling. They wished they could go into battle and kill the invaders themselves. Lu Dahai's eyes were full of desire. He licked his dry lips and clenched his fists quietly. One day, there will be a figure like me, Lu Dahai, on the battlefield to kill the enemy. Gao Tianwu lowered his head, his eyes were hot. I also want to be as powerful as them. And a common belief became more and more firm in their hearts. The Supreme is God. They will also follow Jiang He to death. After all, when they encounter something, Jiang He will really protect them. Maybe one day, when something good happens, they can even line up to drink soup. Above the sky, Injia has recognized the reality that he cannot defeat Jiang He quickly. He must leave the city, wait for the army to gather, and then attack. But how could Jiang He give him a chance to escape? Shua! The silver armor was extremely fast and flew out in a flash. Go thousands of meters away. But in front of him, a strange fluctuation suddenly appeared. Injia could feel that the wind direction in the air was wrong, and his sixth sense also made him stop quickly. The dimensional gate opened, and Jiang He walked out of it. If Injia continued to fly forward at a high speed, he would enter Jiang He's dimensional gate. Judging from Jiang He's current strength, if he wants to break through the boundary and return to the real world, he will need to consume a huge amount of his energy. Jiang He was suspended in the void, looking at the silver armor in front of him, with a solemn and murderous look in his eyes. The appearance of the silver armor monster in front of him was very similar to his nightmare, the monster in black armor, the gatekeeper of the underworld. Injia's attack must be related to the gatekeeper of the underworld. Maybe soon, the gatekeeper of the underworld will also appear in the world and threaten Jiang He's life. However, since the two sides are already fighting to the death, there is no need to hold back. Anyone who comes to attack his fortress must die. Injia's expression was extremely solemn. He was not afraid of Jiang He, but due to some kind of restriction of himself, he could not stay on the landmark for too long. So once it is confirmed that he cannot defeat Jiang He quickly, his fight will be meaningless. Moreover, this is Jiang He's home court, and Lu Qian's Tion High cannon can also pose a certain threat to him. After weighing the pros and cons, he thought that escaping from the battle was the best option. But now, Jiang He obviously will not let him go, so he has to fight. Human, you do have some abilities. But if you offend my Wulwan Empire, you will only have death as an ending. Jiang He learned for the first time the name of the mysterious civilization under the foggy valley, the Wulwan Empire. It was probably a powerful ancient country like the Nash kingdom. Jiang He curled his lips. I die? You don't think you can escape today? Chapter 16:14 Silver Armor's Fear. Injia slowly raised his arms. The sound of thunder rang out from his body, and white electric current rushed out along his arms, instantly turning into two silver lightning snakes hundreds of meters long. Thunder Whip. Injia waved his right arm, and the thick and long thunder whip crackled, and whipped towards Jiang He fiercely. The speed of lightning is extremely fast, and the thunder whip with powerful power can easily burn carbon-based organisms into charcoal. However, Jiang He doesn't buy it. The dimensional gate is blocking in front of him, and the thunder whip is like a drop in the ocean when it hits the dimensional gate. Attacks on the physical level and attacks that cannot exceed the threshold of tolerance can hardly hurt Jiang He at all. Jiang He raised his right hand, and the silver bracelet, boss, on his right hand instantly turned into a huge sword in the tree, appearing in Jiang He's palm. Go, sword in the tree. Dehydrate. With a bang, the sword in the tree quickly extended out, from a sword, into a vast tree and vines, and this time the trees were no longer dark green, but gray and withered. Jiang He controlled the sword in the tree to separate from the water after growing, like a dried tree stump, weaving into a huge cage in the air to encircle Injia. Dry trees can block the attack of electric current, and Jiang He still understands the basic common sense of physics. Jia saw the huge tree cage sweeping towards him, like a large net spread out, and immediately waved the thunder whip in his hand and whipped those branches hard. Snap! 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 The thick vines were smashed by the thunder whip and fell into the sea. But the sword in the tree in Jiang He's hand continued to grow and spread at a faster speed, and then dehydrated. Jia slowly discovered that although he kept defeating these invading trees, the cage in front of him was getting bigger and bigger, almost covering all directions around him. He immediately realized that something was wrong, and then he knew that Jiang He's sword in the tree could continue to grow, and there was no point in destroying it like this. He immediately changed direction and wanted to escape from another direction. But Jiang He's, tracing all things, ability was not a vegetarian either. He directly locked the direction of his escape and space shuttle one step ahead, and then used the sword in the tree to weave a net again. Jia's heart sank immediately. He was clear about Jiang He's plan. That was to use the property of deadwood that could isolate lightning to launch a war of attrition against him. It was impossible for him to escape Jiang He's space shuttle, and his attack could not penetrate the defense of Sunluo Wanxiang at all. Of course, Jiang He's attack could not cause him fatal injuries. But the longer the time dragged on, the greater his disadvantage would be. Jiang He didn't leave him any time to think, because the cage of the sword in the tree had slowly taken shape and was wrapping him up. Jia gritted his teeth, and suddenly a powerful lightning burst out, rushing directly towards a weak hole in the cage of the sword in the tree. His body turned into lightning. Bang! 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 And broke through the thousands-meter-thick vine cage. But after escaping the cage, he found Jiang He in the sky, waiting for him with a half-smile on his face. I told you, Tion High City is not a place where you can come and go as you please. Jiang He's fingertips condensed a black pearl and burst directly at Jia's forehead. Star Cannon! Jia's heart sank, and he suddenly burst out with powerful superpowers. Lightning spread out from his body, forming a huge spherical barrier with a diameter of 10 meters around him. In an instant, the star cannon penetrated the space and shot fiercely on the lightning barrier. Boom! The sword cage in the tree in the air was directly shaken by the powerful force, and most of it was broken, and the debris of the tree fell into the ocean. The collision of power between the two was difficult to tell for a while. After all, the 27,000-point supernatural power index is real. In terms of attack power alone, Jiang He does not have an advantage. But as long as he can delay the opponent, it is enough. Because Jiang He is not fighting alone. Breaking through the tree sword cage one after another and confronting Jiang He head-on, Jia's blood and qi surged, and there was a gap in supernatural power. Under Jiang He's order, Lu Qian fired a Tion High cannon from the Tion High fortress. Jiang He continued to urge the tree sword, and more vines began to spread around Jia. Even if Jia could block or dodge the attack of the Tion High cannon, his defense would inevitably have loopholes, giving Jiang He a chance. So, whether to be trapped by the tree sword or hit directly from behind by the Tion High cannon, Jia must make a choice at this time. There is not much time left for him. After a brief weighing of the pros and cons, Jia decided to dodge the attack of the Tion High cannon. After all, he has experienced the taste of being hit, and it is not pleasant. Lightning flashed on Jia's body, and in an instant, he burst out with amazing power, turning his body into a flash of lightning to avoid the terrifying bombardment of Tion High cannon. His body dodged downwards, and the terrifying light passed through him, which frightened him. However, the next moment, a large number of vines wrapped around him like snakes. When his strength was at its lowest, they wrapped around his arms. Jia gritted his teeth, exerted force suddenly, and the vines broke with a flash of lightning. But his waist suddenly tightened, and another thicker vine bound his waist and abdomen tightly, and then suddenly tightened. The force was so great that it almost squeezed the broken armor on his body into his flesh. Jia's heart gradually emerged with a sense of uneasiness. It took him less than a second to break the vines on his body again, but when he raised his head, his pupils suddenly shrank because of astonishment. Around his body, there was no dead corner in all directions, and the sword in the tree had formed a huge cage. Jiang He stood hundreds of meters in front of him and looked at him coldly. Thousands of vines pointed their tips at him like poisonous snakes.
Could it be that
I will die? Die here? For the first time, Jia had such a thought in his heart. This was very absurd. He was the silver-armored general of the empire, and his strength was extremely strong. All humans were just weak insects in his eyes. On other battlefields at this time, good news had been coming in frequently, and they had imposed sanctions on humans who offended the Wulwan Empire. But why did he fall into such a miserable situation here? He had no time to think, because a large number of vines were already aimed at him and stabbed at him quickly. The terrifying electric light surged on the silver armor, breaking one vine after another. Even though dry trees have a good insulating effect on electric current, the powerful energy can still penetrate their defenses and shatter them. However, in this way, the power consumed will be higher. Chapter 16:15 Black Chi. Jiang He stood in the distance without hurrying, silently taking out a piece of cake from the alien space and eating it. It was the alien food made by Yang He, whose alien index has now reached 9,000 plus, and it has an excellent energy replenishment effect. But he was not in a hurry. Anyway, the right time, right place, and right people were all on his side. He had plenty of time and patience to slowly endure with the aliens in the Fog Valley. When Jia saw the scene, he was so angry, but he had no way. At this time, he was in a desperate situation. He couldn't win the fight, and he couldn't escape the opponent's speed. Therefore, he could only stay here and desperately use his powerful alien power to hold on. At the same time, he also sent a signal for help to the troops in other areas, hoping that they could come to help him. However, the 5 major troops sent by the Wulwan Empire this time attacked 5 military bases of mankind respectively, and they were far away from each other. Not to mention that they still had their own tasks to do. Even if they solved their own goals, it would take at least an hour to rush over. And Jiang He would not give him that much time. He used the sword in the tree to harass Jia constantly. As long as Liu Karen's Tion High cannon was fully charged, it would attack immediately at all costs. On the front battlefield, there was also a strong enemy named Jiang He. Jia was getting more and more tired, and his men were screaming and asking for help. On the battlefield, Leang Yu was covered in blood. Even if she had to deal with hundreds of captains alone, she had no fear of fighting. Her speed was too fast, her knife was too sharp, and her unparalleled martial arts attainments made her a close combat killing machine. Not to mention the aliens with lower superpower index than her. Even if the superpower index was similar to hers, or even higher than hers, the Epsilon-level aliens who dared to appear within her attack range would not even have a chance to attack and would be killed instantly. After more than 10 minutes, there were 50 or 60 bodies of the Fog Valley warriors lying on the ground. The remaining Fog Valley warriors were extremely desperate because the human females in front of them were getting stronger and stronger. Finally, after 3 sword fights, Leang Yu forcibly killed a 9,900-point Wugu sergeant with both the person and the weapon, and then stood there with blood all over her body. She did not continue to attack, and this abnormal action made the other Wugu warriors feel uneasy. Is that female exhausted? Do you want to go? The Wugu warriors were a little hesitant. It's no wonder that in a big battle, the commander chose to flee first, and their morale had long been low. It's inevitable that they would be afraid of fighting. Leang Yu's dark armor was mottled with blood, and the inverted triangle helmet covered her face. She breathed deeply, and streams of blue air rose from the exhaust holes of the armor, and then slowly became thicker, and the color began to turn dark blue, even deeper. In the end, the color of this airflow turned into black. It was like a thick dark death, as gloomy as the river water flowing in the Styx. A huge sense of fear lingered in the hearts of every Wugu warrior around, and they subconsciously began to retreat. The short human female in front of them, who was only half their size, looked like an awakened demon in their eyes. Leang Yu slowly raised her head. After continuous killing, she absorbed the source of God, and the last barrier was finally broken. Unlike Jiang He, Jiang He was born to be above Epsilon, so his breakthrough came naturally, and he didn't feel anything special. But Leang Yu was not like that. Her genetic talent was not as good as Jiang He, so after absorbing the source of God, it took a long time to reach this point today. So her breakthrough was more difficult, so the feeling of breaking the shackle was more obvious. It was a sublimation of the life level, reborn, and the activity of every cell in the body was increasing. She even felt that she could cut a mountain with one knife and run through the whole world in an instant. Leang Yu did not forget that she was on the battlefield, but at this moment she lowered her head and scanned the enemies around her. She was clearly looking up at those tall monsters, but it felt like she was looking down at a group of ants. After being stared at by Leang Yu, the hearts of those Wugu warriors seemed to fall into an ice cellar, and only a huge word, death, emerged in their minds. Not good. She actually raised her life level. A Wugu warrior screamed. Leang Yu raised the dragon roar in her hand, and black qi surged out of her body. After a martial arts master with the most powerful fighting skills in the world was promoted to Epsilon, it was like opening the floodgates to release the flood, and it was out of control. Leang Yu raised the knife in her hand, and then slashed it cleanly and neatly. She slashed the void, but the dark blade light swept across everything in front of her in an instant. Puff, puff, puff. Dozens of Wugu soldiers' waists gushed out blood like fountains. Their bodies were cut in half by this knife. A large number of bodies fell directly to the ground, and miserable screams echoed in the land of Tion High City. Seeing this scene, the Wugu soldiers no longer had the will to fight. At this time, they were no longer on the same level as Leang Yu. Hurry up, she is no longer an enemy we can deal with. Hurry up and call the commander over. But the commander is also fighting the enemies.
What?
How could this happen? Why would there be 3 level 5 ability users in a mere human city at the same time? Leang Yu responded with the knife in her hand. She has always been decisive in killing, and now that she has been promoted, she is more eager to verify how strong she is. So she picked up the knife and chased after him without hesitation. The dragon-sounding long knife in her hand swept horizontally, chopped vertically, and chopped sideways. The huge black blade light was like a sky curtain hanging down, and every Mist Valley warrior was killed on the spot wherever she passed. In less than a minute, she killed all the Mist Valley warriors. Then she looked into the distance, where Hua was fighting fiercely with a giant beast transformed by the black and white commander. Leang Yu clenched the long knife in her hand. Her eyes were extremely sharp. I haven't fought with an alien of this level yet. Now she has been promoted to the level of Epsilon and finally reached the state she has dreamed of for a long time. Now she can fight side by side with Jiang He. Leang Yu's body sank slightly, and then she kicked the ground with both feet. The ground beneath her feet shattered instantly. Her body, like a cheetah, drew a black line in the air and went straight towards the black and white commander.